Is there a cosmic machine hidden deep within Mount Shasta? Patrick C. writes, Guy Warren Ballard was a mining engineer. In 1930, he went on a business trip to Mount Shasta in Northern California. Ballard had become interested in mysticism before his trip, and he wanted to use his off-duty hours at Mount Shasta to unravel rumors about the existence of a secret branch of a brotherhood called the Brothers of Mount Shasta. The Brotherhood of Mount Shasta. The Shasta Brotherhood was said to have a secret underground headquarters inside the famous California mountain, and legends which caught Ballard's interest began circulating before the turn of the century. Persistent rumors told of secret dwellers living inside Mount Shasta who practiced a profound mystical tradition. There were supposedly secret dwellers said to be descending from inhabitants of an ancient lost continent of Lemuria in the Pacific Ocean. Whatever the truth was behind all these legends, may or may not be, it is unquestioned that Mount Shasta has long been a focus of mystical activity. Associated with mystical activity, even sightings of supposed UFO. And this is one of the things that William Tompkins talked about, that Mount Shasta has a lot of UFO visitations. Now, going back to this, May 1931, the issue of Rosicrucian Digest, published a year following Ballard's trip to Shasta and a decade and a half before UFOs were popularized in the media, we read the following description of a flying boat in an article about the Shasta mystics. Many testified to have seen the strange boat or boats which sail the Pacific Ocean and then rise at its shores and sail through the air to drop again in the vicinity of Shasta. This same boat was seen several times by officials employed by the cable station located near Vancouver, and the boat has been sighted as far north as the Aleutian Islands. What does that sound like to you? A boat in the sea, rising at the shore, sailing through the air, dropping again in the vicinity of Shasta, the mountain that is. Now, according to the same article, the boat, quote, has neither sails nor smokestacks, end quote. Against this background, Ballard's experience on Mount Shasta takes on added significance. What about the Moose Lake incident that we talked about in the couple of videos past, when certain fishermen left their wives at the camp and went to a lake up a mountain across from Moose Lake in order to fish, and they came around, as they were walking, they noticed a swarm of UFOs, and the UFOs were seen at least 4 days in a row. This was in 1947, and their experience was very strange because as they were walking up towards the fishing area, they ran into a man that was dressed in very classy attire, quote unquote, who spoke very clearly to them as if he was an alien. And they thought he was an alien. He was a humanoid person with translucent brown eyes. Very strange things going on. Now, going back to this. Oh, and the alien told them that he explained to them that these crafts were from his people and that they liked to land and take off in areas that were rural and not heavily populated for some odd reason. So here we have these things going on, these sightings going on around Mount Shasta as well. Now, Ballard writes that he had hiked up the side of the mountain and paused by a spring, and as he went down to fill a cup with water, he felt an electrical current pass through his body from head to foot. Looking around, he saw behind him a bearded man who looked to be in his 20s or 30s. The stranger later introduced himself as the Count of Saint Germain, who reportedly died in 1784. As a result of the meeting, Ballard began a full-time career spreading the teachings of the new Saint Germain. Ballard established the I Am Foundation, an organization with secret initiations and step-by-step teachings, Ballard claims that he had been introduced to members of the highest levels of the Brotherhood under which the I Am was founded. The physical appearance of Saint Germain on Mount Shasta was considerably different than the Saint Germain of the 18th century. The earlier Saint Germain was in his 40s, black-haired and clean-shaven. The Mount Shasta Saint Germain is depicted as a younger brown-haired man sporting a beard. The tales of Ballard tells of his experience with Saint Germain are so extraordinary that many people derive them as fantasy. Surprisingly, when we strip away the interpretations which Ballard and his critics gave to his experiences, we find that his stories present a picture not only consistent with the rest of the history, but that they add remarkable new claims with rather startling implications for our own time. The first meeting between Ballard and the quote-unquote Saint Germain took place between August and October of 1930. During the earliest of those meetings, Saint Germain had Ballard drink a liquid which caused a strong physical reaction and made Ballard go, quote-unquote, out of body. This same out-of-body phenomenon is often reported by people taking strong drugs, of course. After imbibing this fluid on several occasions, Ballard said he was able to go out of body without the drink, and this testimony consistent with other evidence indicating that once a person learns to go out of body, it can become easy to do for a time. Ballard alleged that while he was in some of the out-of-body states, Saint Germain, who was also out of body, took him to some rather remarkable places. One location was a mountain in the Teton Range of Wyoming, a mountain Mr. Ballard calls the Royal Teton, and according to Ballard, there was a sealed tunnel entrance near the top of the mountain that led to elevators. The elevators took the occupants to a location 2,000 feet down into the ground, into a complex full of huge halls, storage spaces, and even mines. In one of the large underground rooms, Ballard claims he saw an all-seeing eye symbol on the wall. There was also a large machine Ballard described as, quote, a disc of gold at least 12 feet in diameter, filling it so that the points touched the circumference blazon on 7-pointed star, composed entirely of yellow diamonds, a solid mass of brilliant golden light. And around the main disc were 7 small discs which Ballard gave symbolic meaning to. Mr. Ballard quickly revealed that this large machine was not a mere symbol. As I later learned, at certain times of special purposes, great cosmic beings pour through these discs their powerful currents of force. Great cosmic beings, quote-unquote, was a term used by Ballard to denote leaders at the highest echelons of the Brotherhood. In his writings, Ballard claims that some of the Brotherhood's great cosmic beings are of extraterrestrial origin. Now this is very strange because this encounter with a strange being calling himself Germain, he calls him Saint Germain, why would he call him a saint? It sounds like what the Moose Lake incident was like, with the mothership and the drone ships, with the extraterrestrial, with the translucent brown eyes. And it seems like these, for some odd reason, these alien spacecraft like to land on high mountains on the west coast. I wonder if this has anything to do with the LA lights in 1942. Very strange. But anyway, going back to this, Ballard was told that the currents of force emitted by the machine were directed to the humanity of Earth, quote unquote. And what was the purpose of this? This radiation affects the 7 ganglionic centers, the nerve centers around the brain and spinal cord within every human body on our planet, as well as all animal and plant life. This is an astonishing claim because it would mean that powerful electronics were used by this brotherhood of great cosmic beings, these extraterrestrials, to affect the nervous systems on everything living on our Earth on a widespread scale. And according to the I Am Foundation magazine, the purpose of the radiation was behavior modification designed to consume and purify the vortices of force produced by the discordant and vicious activities of mankind. The idea of behavior modification through electronics radiation is not an absurd one. In recent years, the Soviet Union has been developing using electronic tranquilizing machines to behaviorally affect large populations. Such devices are also being proposed for classroom use. And that's very strange. But although the alleged purpose of the Royal Teton radiation machine was to reduce discordant human activity, such radiation will usually have the opposite long-term effect because the emanations are actually irritants to the central nervous system, even if they do cause a superficial sedation. It's ironic that within less than a decade after Ballard wrote of his experience, the world exploded into one of its bloodiest conflicts of World War II. Either the machine of the great cosmic beings did not work, or it did. In his first book, Ballard claims to have visited 4 secret underground locations, altogether 2 of them while out of body and 2 by regular human means. It's interesting that each location corresponded to a region in which there existed earlier in history a major civilization worshipping the custodial gods. The Teton location coincided with the ancient North American civilizations. A similar underground location in South America, hand in hand, goes into the Inca civilization on that continent. A trip by boat and automobile resulted in a stopover at a reputed underground location in the Arabian Peninsula, matching ancient Mesopotamian and Egyptian civilizations. The 4th location in the mountains above the city of Darjeeling in India corresponds to the ancient Aryan civilizations of the Indian subcontinent. The underground locations were reportedly quite expansive and served a number of functions. In addition to holding electronic gadgetry, the caves were reportedly filled with enormous quantities of precious metals and gems. This is interesting because we know that most of the ancient civilizations worshipped the custodial gods, quote unquote, regularly made substantial offerings of gold, silver, gems, and other precious minerals to those gods. Ballard alleged that the treasures he viewed came from some of those civilizations. In these containers, gold is stored from the lost continents of Mu and Atlantis, the ancient civilizations of the Gobi and Sahara deserts, Egypt, Chaldea, Babylonia, Greece, Rome, and 2 others. Mu and Atlantis. There we go again. We have an Atlantis connection here now. So it's been generally assumed by historians that the ancient offerings went to the priest class. But if we take the existence of the custodial gods, quote unquote, seriously, it's more like the gods here really did carry the stuff away, it seems. Ballard's testimony would indicate that a great many of the precious stones and metals were stored by these gods in inaccessible underground locations on Earth, perhaps to help finance custodial activities and keep the corrupted brotherhood functioning. Precious metals and stones are expensive largely because of artificial scarcity. When Cecil Rhodes developed his near monopoly on diamond mining in southern Africa, he was able to maintain a high price of diamonds by creating a very rigid channel through which his diamonds were sold. This is true of the diamond trade today. According to Ballard, the ascending masters, quote unquote, of this brotherhood intended to keep precious metals and gems scarce. Ballard says, if all this gold were to be released into the outer activity of the world, it would compel sudden readjustment in every phase of human existence. At present, it would not be part of wisdom, end quote. And this entity, Germain, reportedly stated that the huge quantities of gold and treasure would be released into the outer world when mankind has transcended its unbridled selfishness. The implication is that these precious gems and minerals exist in sufficient quantities on Earth to cause a dramatic drop in their value if they should all be released into the public domain. A further implication that they are hoarded and made scarce to preserve the wealth of the Brotherhood, or these ETs here. Now, if the treasures do indeed exist, then the Brotherhood is a sizable hidden economic power on Earth. According to Ballard, this hidden economic might does exist and has been used to influence human activities. During his tour of the Teton location, Germain reportedly told Ballard, "No one in this world ever accumulated a great amount of wealth without the assistance and radiation of some ascended master. There are occasions in which individuals can be used as a focus of great wealth for a specific purpose, and at such times greatly added power is radiated to them, for through it they can receive personal assistance, such as an experiences, a test, and opportunity for their growth." It's certainly true that wealth has traditionally been concentrated in the hands of a small minority. It's also true that many members of that minority throughout history were affiliated with mystical brotherhood networks. The problem with this state of affairs would not be the narrow control of wealth. It would be that this control has often been used to breed conflict and spiritual decay. Now, during his trips to this alleged underground location, Ballard was shown radio-type gadgets. One such gadget could reportedly tune in on conversations taking place in various parts of the world, including in the offices of the Bank of England. And as we recall, the Bank of England was one of the earliest institutions founded on the inflatable paper money system. That system, largely the creation of mystics and revolutionaries affiliated with the Brotherhood Network. The Bank of England continued to be the principal center of that system until today. The alleged eavesdropping capability of Ballard's ascended masters is remarkable because it would indicate a direct monitoring of a principal central bank in the international paper money system by top echelons of this brotherhood. This becomes even more interesting in the next chapter when we consider the assistance that the Bank of England's director Montague Norman gave Hitler and the German movement during the very time that this electronic snooping was reportedly occurring. And we have to note the large-scale destruction of irreplaceable historical records in the Eastern and Western hemispheres by the zealous Christians. Historians have been able to piece together much of humanity history anyway, but is that history complete? According to Ballard, it's not. Mankind lost additional records to Brotherhood leaders who had deliberately removed and hidden the writings. Ballard claims that he saw some of those ancient historical works inside the underground mountain complex north of Darjeeling in India. And he said that these records would not be released to the human race until the ascended masters, these ETs, so ordered them. Quote, "These records are not brought forth into the use of the outer world at the present time because of lack of spiritual growth and understanding of the people. The race has a relentless and critical feeling that it is a very destructive activity. The ascending masters of the Great White Brotherhood have always foreseen such destructive impulses and have withdrawn all important records of every civilization and preserved them, then left the less important to be destroyed by the vicious impulses of the Vandals." End quote. So if this is true, this above quote is a stunning admission. Mankind's lack of spiritual growth has been caused by the very organizations to which these ascending masters belong. Right? Right. So it was a brotherhood that turned spiritual knowledge into incomprehensible symbols, unfathomable mysteries, superstitious rites, savage apocalypticisms, and all of the other ills which ensue thereof. Now, in such circumstances, not surprising that human beings would experience a relentless and critical feeling The solution of withholding knowledge will certainly not correct those human deficiencies. Such a solution can only deepen the problem. The claim that important records must be hidden to prevent their destruction is spurious. In Ballard's day, book printing was a well-established art, and the important record could be easily duplicated and mass-produced with the original safely stored away. If indeed such hidden records existed, we must conclude that the only purpose for hiding them was to keep mankind ignorant and in the dark of the past. So how could he go forward? The I Am movement created by Ballard preached a judgment day philosophy and strong anti-communism. Despite attacks on the press in the US, the I Am movement attracted a large following during the 1930s and 40s. The I Am taught that communism was the final evil of the world and it would soon be destroyed by the ascending masters. Interestingly, no mention was made of Nazism of the growing time in Germany. The ascending masters and their followers were clearly political creatures. According to Ballard, members of this brotherhood were deeply involved in espionage and police organizations in the 1930s, and the memberhoods of the brotherhood members reportedly served in the American Secret Service, and Ballard claims that he had met agents of the French Secret Service, France's national intelligence organization, who were members of the brotherhood and who called themselves the Brothers of Light. As if the reappearance of Germain in 1930 was not enough, the I Am movement hosted another most distinguished speaker. Apart from Saint Germain, Jesus Christ, they said, was a featured guest in New York on October 24th, 1937, in Oakland, California, February 15, 1939, and whether this Jesus, quote-unquote, was actually a person claiming to be Christ or was simply Mr. or Mrs. Ballard acting as mediums to channel spirit voices, we have not been able to discover. Whichever it may have been, they respectfully submit that this was a bona fide second coming of Jesus Christ as a custodial religion will probably ever deliver. The second coming in the 1930s was sponsored by the same brotherhood network which sponsored and betrayed Jesus centuries before. Now, naturally, the newest second coming did not result in 1,000 years of peace and spiritual salvation. The I Am movement died out rather quickly after its peak in the 1940s, and is quite small today. It never gained the following or influence that so many of the quote-unquote brotherhood branches had attained. To most people, today's I Am Foundation is little more than a curiosity run primarily by retired people. Indeed, the I Am is not important to us for what it is now. It's significant for what it was in 1930s and 40s. Was Ballard's I Am Foundation the concoction of blatant spiritual quacks offering a home-brewed spiritual elixir to people seeking a ray of hope in the world gone awry? Did Ballard really meet someone that afternoon in 1930 on Mount Shasta? Was the I Am simply a bit of mystical razzle-dazzle designed to make money for the Ballard family, as critics have maintained? Or did Ballard reportedly offer a rare glimpse into some of the activities of the Brotherhood in the 20th century? It's a pity that Ballard is not here today to make his confession and answer these questions. This is by Patrick C. on Bended Reality. If you'd like to join me on my Patreon account, you will hear content not covered by mainstream media. These riveting stories will be based on my research, and I will state my opinions and give my personal insight on diverse and controversial subjects and world events not covered by mainstream media, and not supported by YouTube guidelines. So whatever I have on my Patreon, most of those will not be on my YouTube channel. Please consider becoming a member today. More of the most significant and important videos will be on my Patreon channel. Your support helps me to continue my research and keeps this YouTube channel alive. And we depend on your support, your generous charity, because we help economically challenged families here in Athens, Greece, in Kapota, and we also help the young generation with university tuition and the community around our church. Thank you.